Hi, everybody, and welcome to the I Rock Knits podcast. My name is Cori Eichelberger, and today is Monday, January 4th. It is 34 degrees, and the sun is shining, and the snow is melting here in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Cody, the giant chocolate labradoodle, is laying at my feet, and so we have a little bit of a shorter show in place for you today. I think the podcasts have been getting a little long, and they take longer to record, longer to edit, longer to upload, and then longer to watch. I'm just going to leave out a segment or two each time and not try to hit all the topics every single time I come to the table here. What am I wearing today? This is the Bada Bing Pontini. It is a pattern of mine that you can find on Ravelry as well as Etsy and site. Most of my patterns are up on my website now for sale, so if you are not a Ravelry user, I will probably be closing my Etsy store now that the patterns have moved over, because Etsy's fees are quite a bit higher than actually Love Crafts or Ravelry or my website. So I think I don't really need to have all my patterns up in 4 different places and keep everything kind of juggled. This is a bulky weight knit, although you can hold several yarns doubled and probably get the same gauge. It was knit on a size 10 needle. It is a different type of measurement because you're not taking an actual bust measurement. You're taking a measurement around your shoulders. I wrote it for small medium and medium large at the time, although I've had a number of people just add stitches. It's just a simple repeat of slip stitches and a stripe. So very simple to size up to much bigger poncho so it doesn't quite hug your shoulders. This one isn't too tight on me. The thing that I like about this Bada Bing is that it's great to sit with on when you're in your pajamas in the evening and it's cold. So if you are in a colder climate or you keep your house at a colder temperature, this is just really nice to pull on over your shoulders and kind of give you a hug when you're in your pajamas, and you don't have to have, you have a blanket on your lap maybe. I don't know. I've been snuggling in kind of warmly the last month here, and so I think that's why I really do like it. I have a number of samples that came back from yarn stores that were prototypes, as well as items that they could show or hang up in their store, and I have some extras. So I think I will be putting the extras out on Etsy for sale here. I have this one, which is mine, of course, the orange. And I really like using the variegated or speckled yarns in here, but I will measure all of these, and then I will put the width and the height up on Etsy. I'm going to have to get my money back as well as some knitting time, and I had a couple sample knitters work on these for me as well, and so they're not going to be inexpensive, especially because in bulky yarn you have to buy several skeins. But here is one. Here is a smaller version, so if you are petite in the shoulders, that one's not very big. Here is another one if you love purples and pinks. Here is a larger version in green and purple. And here is the largest one. This was done in super bulky because the yarn store that had it in the store for several months wanted to highlight their super bulky area, and so I had this one knit up. Much more difficult to knit in those bulky weight yarns when you're knitting color work or corrugated ribbing. It's a little bit harder on your hands, but if you've got some super bulky laying around, this one's really fun in a large size. I think that yellow and gray, that grello, is fun. So you could take a look. I will try to have those up tomorrow when the podcast goes up. I have not set my pricing. I'm going to take a look at the yardage and how much I had to pay the sample knitters to kind of recoup some of the costs for that. Sometimes a yarn store will hire one of my sample knitters to knit the item for them, and I do like to keep a couple of them as samples for when I take the show on the road and talk about patterns, but I just thought I would give you guys first dibs. Then I'll probably announce it eventually on Instagram, but since you're loyal viewers and some of you might really want to have one, why shouldn't you have first choice? I don't want this to become a podcast about selling things, but I was getting them ready last week and I almost posted on Instagram, and then I thought, no, you know what? I think I'll wait and let anybody who's watching the podcast have, the first week kind of to grab one if they would prefer to have one. So you could just go over to my Etsy store, which is IROCKNITTERS. Let's move on. I have a recipe of the week for you this week, and it is one that I think you'll really love. I made shepherd's pie last night, and I have a really good shepherd's pie recipe. I don't know what makes it so brilliant, because it just has great flavor. This recipe is basically brown your meat and then add everything in and bake it in the oven. Put some mashed potatoes on top. It's delicious. It makes a big casserole pan, and so we will eat it several nights in a row, but we opted to not have anything else with it last night, so we both had a little bit of extra helping. So you just brown either ground beef or lamb, and I've always used beef. I've never even purchased lamb, so and then it has an onion, a carrot, peas, and then flour, butter, red wine, tomato paste, Worcestershire sauce, stock, and then mashed potatoes. I have made this with the mashed potatoes you can buy at the store in the little black thing. My husband's not a huge mashed potato fan, and so then I would just take that out and spoon it on about half of it. But yesterday we made actual real mashed potatoes, and he said it was much better that way and delicious, and he ate a lot of mashed potatoes with the kind of sauce over the top. I think it's the Worcestershire with the wine that really gives it a great flavor. It is easy to make. You bake it for like 30 minutes, so once you have everything mixed up. The longest part actually was making the mashed potatoes. So mashed potatoes, which left over, I can't even imagine who would ever have mashed potatoes left over. It's a delicious recipe. It comes from Dewdrop Deb on the food.com, and it was a traditional Irish shepherd's pie in 2008, and we just really like it. It's that great Minnesota winter comfort food, and mostly just peas and carrots, so there's no other starch in it. Usually some of those recipes have cubed beef, braised short ribs in them, cooked down beef, or even parsnips and lots of other vegetables, right? And this one doesn't, but delicious. So I highly recommend. If you haven't checked out, the recipes are all listed in the Ravelry group, as well as I try to list and link, if I can, in the show notes below what the name of the recipe is and where I got it from. So you can just look at it and go over and Google it, and it should pop up. Shouldn't be a problem for anybody. What are my tips and tricks this week? I have, I think, 3 or 4 little tips for you. I was organizing sweaters this fall and taking down my winter sweaters and putting my summer and spring sweaters away, and we ran out of space in the closet. We have a large closet, a walk-in closet with lots of shelves and hanging space, but I have so many sweaters and so many shawls that it was just getting a little congested. And so I said to my husband, we never use that top shelf that's way up by the ceiling, and so I will often put the heavier sweaters or the things that are bigger, more bulky, up on that top shelf, and I just kind of stand down and I throw them up there because I'm only 5'3". But I said to him, I think I could stack the sweaters up there keep them in a better manner if I had a box up there. So this is what I did. I took a Sterilite box and I tipped it on its side, and then I stacked the big bulky sweaters inside of it. And I know that some of you might have under clothes hanging space or space in a central area, and I just found that they have been staying stacked so nicely, like the stack doesn't fall over when I take one out because it's kind of coordinated by the sides. I would think that the same thing would happen if you use those hanging clothes bins that hang in the middle of a closet where you kind of stack things. It's just been working really well for me, and I know a lot of people struggle with how to house their knits. So I thought, okay, I'm going to take a picture of that today and show everybody how. I have 2 of these, one on each side of the closet just kind of stacked up there. I can see everything I have. And we do have a step stool in our closet because I can't reach up too high, even on the kind of shelf off to the side. So we always have a step stool in there, and I can just kind of reach up and grab down the ones I want. So that's tip number 1. I posted this on Instagram yesterday, but have you guys seen these new Flox stitch marker, shawl pin, stitch picker upper? These are great. So see how it bends? And so you could hook it on an actual stitch by putting it through your knitting, and it could hold a drop stitch. You can use the end to pick up a stitch. You can use it as a cable needle. And then someone suggested, or it says on the little packaging, that you can, use it as a shawl pin because it's very small. I would say it's probably like a, 2.0 knitting needle, something like that. Needle on the end there, but just so great. I got it from a friend for Christmas as a gift. And I have them sitting in the little dish next to my chair, and I've used it a couple of times already. I just think it's awesome, called Flox, Flox, and it's by Floops. Floops stitch markers are the little ones that look like hair ties, if you haven't seen those before. Anyway, so tip number 2. Then I saw a post on Instagram from the ladies at Elgin Knitworks in north of, where is it? North of Chicago, over I'm having trouble finding my words. The 3 Pie podcast ladies, that's their local yarn store. And so I follow them, and they had this lost that little tool post on their Instagram feed, and I didn't know what it was. And I love having all the gadgets, right? Like, I want to know what all the gadgets for knitting are. And this is a cord key. So I ordered one. And look at that. This is the thing that you stick in your interchangeable needle to tighten it. And it's big, so you don't lose it anywhere. Isn't that great? And somebody must be hand turning this wood and then putting, the little tips in there. But I have not seen these anywhere else. And you would have to call Elgin Knitworks or email them on their website because they did not have them up and available on like a web store that I could find. And so then she emailed me back, and then I sent her a PayPal payment, and then they shipped them right out. And I just think it was great. If you are a person who uses interchangeables all the time and you have to find that little silver key with the loop on it, and I know you can use a safety pin and like a bobby pin or something like that to stick through that, but I have tied those onto my project bags or my needle cases to just keep them handy because I could never find them. So I tied them on with like a piece of red string. And I thought this might be really nice to actually have in my needle caddy, one of my interchangeable needle caddies. So beautiful wood. I had choices of a couple of different colors of wood. I just thought it was really pretty. So you might want to take a look at that, especially if you use interchangeable needles and they unscrew all the time. Okay, I'm not going to do a shawl of the week this week because I'm going to kind of count the Bada Bing, which is really a Pontini, in the shawl segment, which I kind of, talked to you about a little bit. I think if I want to tell you a little bit more about it, is that I really like it with bright colors, and I wanted it to kind of pop. I thought of it as more of a coming out of winter into a spring or summer kind of thing to put on. You could just carry it in your bag and then put it on when you go into air conditioning, kind of a thing. But I was watching The Sopranos at the time, and there was a quote in that show about Bada Bing, and I just thought it was so funny, that Tony Soprano, and they would say that. And I think there was a bar, not a nice bar, stripper bar, I think, named Bada Bing, if I remember right. Now it's been many years, but since this came out, or even since I watched The Sopranos. But I loved that show. I did not watch it in real time when it came out. I thought it was going to be like mafia, killing people, and like a police kind of show, and it, not at all. I mean, they are members of the mafia, but it showed them as more human and having, you know, people problems, and I thought the characters were great. And there is some, you know, blood and guts, but anyway, if you are looking for a series, I don't know how I got rambling off on that. But today's sweater of the day is the Vina sweater, and I'm so excited to be to this sweater finally because I love this sweater. I love a good chevron. I love stripes. I love bright, you know, colors, and this is just a real treat, this sweater. I hope that a lot of you love it and decide to knit it as well. So it is by Jane Ellison. So it is not available as a single pattern. You're going to have to hunt down the book and find it. The pattern came out in 2012, but the book is available several places. I did Google it, and it's available for $12, $14, $16, and $18 depending on the vendor, and it has 12 patterns in it. So that is not a bad price if you're buying a book with 12 patterns in it. I mean, that's quite a bargain. But if you're just buying it for one pattern, I understand that might seem like kind of a lot. So you might have to look around and, you know, kind of try to find it used. Maybe a local library I'd have it. I would consider it more of a pattern book than a magazine, so I don't know if that's the case, but I did see it on Little Knits and yarn.com, I think, and Noro's website had links to finding it in your area. Your local yarn store, if they carry any Noro yarn, might have old copies of it. So anyway, I just want to be upfront about the fact that it, you know, might not be as readily available as just going and buying the single pattern download. The first time I knit this with Kiara, which is Kirara, Kirara. It's a DK weight, 21 stitches and 4 inches, and it was knit on a US 5. And I used the yarn that the pattern called for, and that's this one. And it, Kirara is a wool, cotton, silk, and Angora blend. 51% wool, 29% cotton, 10% silk, and 10% Angora. So a really interesting blend of fibers. It comes in a 50-gram ball of 164 yards. And the price that I found on the yarn was $10.95 for a 50-gram ball. So a little pricey, although it is not easy to find. There are a number of substitutes for Noro in the DK weight. There are lots of options in the DK weight. I used for the second one that I knit Noro Coromo, and that is a cotton, wool, and silk blend, and I just loved the yellow and orange in that one. And it was 50 grams for 137 yards, so a little bit weight yarn, but not too bad, so it was manageable. My notes from this pattern say that I cast on the extra large and I knit for about 2 inches, and it was way too big. I couldn't decide if I should go down a needle size or go down to a large in the sizing, or both. And so I decided to try the large. I recast on for the large, which was 24 stitches less than, you know, and I worked a couple of inches, and it was still seemed too big, but I was going to keep going and to see what happens. Because what you're doing is you're casting around at the bottom of the sweater, which is around, you know, on my body, the widest part, my hips and my rear end. And so that's a big circumference, and I was just feeling like, oh my gosh, it might be too big. But it worked perfectly. It hangs without hitching on my butt or hips. It's a perfect circumference, that large size for me. And so I was really pleased that I just stayed with the large. This is my other note. This is a briefly written pattern, only 2 pages and no real directions for seaming the sleeves. I could not recommend for a knitter without quite a bit of experience if they need more guidance throughout the pattern. Now, that being said, this is a tube because you're knitting, this is not a tube, you're knitting back and forth from the front to the back in basically, you know, almost straight up with a little bit of shaping happening, and then you just divide for the fronts and the back, and then the sleeves are knit separately and seamed in, so the raglan is not included in the pattern, which is one of the reasons that it is a briefly written pattern, which is, I think that's a weird way for me to put that, but sparsely. is because then I don't have to put the information on how to decrease for all the sizes on the raglan. You just do the decrease over a certain number of rows and a certain number of stitches, and then you just sew it together using mattress stitch, which is not difficult. You know, you're knitting 2 stockinette pieces together with mattress stitch. They just happen to be on the diagonal. So I wouldn't be scared away by it, but it couldn't be your first sweater, I don't think, because you have to have some, you know, raglan shaping knowledge in your brain, and maybe that's it. I don't know. Also, when and the original sweater I'm going to put up on the screen, the 2 sleeves don't match, because as you're knitting and color changing yarn, especially a long striping repeat, you're going to get to a new part of the yarn. So I needed extra yarn, because then all I really had to do was pull out the yarn until I got to the next point where the yarn started in the same spot for the sleeve. Does that make sense? So I got to the turquoise and pink on this sleeve over here, and then I went and did the turquoise and pink on this sleeve, and then they matched up pretty well. So the same thing happened when I did the fronts and the back. Now, fronts and back don't show at the same time, so the first thing I did was knit up, going just back and forth on the back section and doing the raglan. It gets smaller and smaller, which is why the stripes get fatter and fatter, right? Because you have that color work is going for a more narrow piece width-wise, so the stripes get wider. But then when I brought it around to the front, I kind of wanted the 2 fronts to match as well. So then you just start going back and forth on this side and back and forth on this side, and I just tried to find something that was fairly similar. What you'll see is that the Noro yarn wasn't, you know, dyed absolutely perfectly to my gauge, so that it's a little off, and I couldn't fix that. It didn't bother me as much. Now that I've pointed it out to you, I think you really notice it, but when you first sat down to look at it, you probably didn't notice that it was a little off. I could have worked harder at that, but you know, there was a lot going on in the sweater when you're doing the raglan decreases as you go up, and then putting the little neck, and then you pick up for the front. And I did want my front band that I picked up to be really bright. I wanted it to, so I searched for the part in the yarn, you know, I just sat there and pulled it out till I got to that bright blue again, and then that's where I picked up with the pink and cast off with the bright blue. So I really just manipulated the yarn to work for me, and then you have all these little pieces and balls left over that you don't actually use for that, but you can certainly use them for something else going forward. But you need to buy more yarn if you want that to happen. Now, I knew all that going into knitting this one, and I still muffed it up a bit. I like to tell you guys when I do things that are a little off. So I did the same thing for this one. I cast on the same size. The yarn was not the same weight, so you know that it's going to turn out a little bit smaller. It's not quite as long as this one. So this is my fall winter version, and then this is my kind of spring summer version because it's got some cotton in it. And I knit all the way up, and then I did the back piece, and then I made the front pieces match, which I did a better job of, right? They match a lot better. Then I found the yellow on the sleeves. Easiest part to find in the yarn is the brightest color, so the blue on this one and the yellow on that one. And then I just knit the sleeve from the yellow up on both sides, and I got ready to wear it, and I forgot to do the waist decreases. So this piece is really square. It doesn't go in at all, whereas this one is much more A-line. And then you have a decision to make. What are you going to do about it, right? Are you going to rip all that back? I mean, it would have been a lot to rip back. And I thought, kind of pride myself on having a fix for things. So what I did is I took a piece of silk wrapped yarn, and I ran it around right here, and I cinched it in. Just like I do when I run it around the neckline, I just made it have this baby doll appearance so that it does go in there, and I can adjust that. All I did was go underneath some purl bumps all the way around it and then cinched it in. It's more cinched in the back. You see this line of thread right here? I just went under, and then I just cinched it in and kind of tied 2 knots, tiny little overhand knots on either end, and then wove it in going back the other way so that wouldn't come out. And it kind of saved the day and also saved me from ever having to rip that whole thing back out and make it right. So the sweater was too boxy. It just hung straight down, which is okay. I don't mind that look, but I loved this one so much with it's just got a little bit of decreasing when you get up, to the bust area. And so I just thought, or under bust, right? Where I am smaller at my high bust area. And so I just wanted this one to be, I would say it's not quite as flattering. For one, it's not quite as long, but it worked. It was a save for a sweater that I obviously thought I could knit mostly without the pattern. And then there I was. So I think the best spot you can see the gather is right here. I have it really gathered under the arm right here. And that's kind of how it goes. It's harder to see unless you're up really close. It doesn't really show that much, but it works well. Then the other thing I'd like to talk about briefly is the buttons. I found a yarn store here in the Twin Cities that has since changed owners, but they carried vintage buttons and vintage buttons cards, and they're usually at Yarn Over every year, so I like to try to look at their vintage buttons. But I put little colored square buttons, so I have a blue, a maroon, a green, kind of aqua, and then a tan on this one, so it matches the colors, and they're squares, and they were vintage. I hope that you can see those. Maybe I'll take a close-up picture. And then on this one I had these like almost rainbow colored with a white center, which are kind of a glass button too. And I just really think that the buttons help make the garment when you're looking at it up close. It just definitely kind of elevates the garment a little bit when you can add a button that is special. As I was getting prepared for today's podcast and I was printing out this pattern and I was looking up information on Jane Ellison, because she has like 900 patterns on Ravelry, and I don't think she's a name that is like super well known. Like, people don't know her like they might know Hohe or Caitlin Hunter or even Andrea Mowry, any of those, people. And she's got 900, Stephen West, right? She's got 900 patterns on Ravelry. And so I went out and looked her up, and because I recognized her name and I know she had done work for Noro in the past. She went to fashion school and worked in the industry in sweaters and designing and making sweaters for many years in fashion. And she's from Skipton in North Yorkshire in the UK. And now she has a yarn store, and it's north, the northern part of the UK, so much closer to, Scotland. And but I went over and looked, and her yarn store name is Pearl and Jane, and I started following on her Instagram. She doesn't have a huge Instagram following, but she does have all of her, items out there. So if you like looking at new designers and seeing what they have out there, you might want to go give Jane a follow. And I thought, I know her name because I've knit something else from her. And so I dug out today another sweater that I knit by her. And this sweater is called Gloria, and it's in Noro yarn, and it came out in like 2004. And I think I knit it in 2007, and I don't wear it very much anymore. But now that I got it down, I will. I think it was recommended that you use 2 different kinds of yarn for it. And then I used ribbon on the bottom. Can you see my pretty ribbon? I found this yarn that matched this ribbon back in the day when novelty yarns were a little more popular. And I thought, I am going to use those together in a sweater. Kind of an oversized coat, jacket, cardigan that I wear with a big cable knit turtleneck underneath it. It's Aran weight, 18 stitches to 4 inches. I knit it on a US size 8. It called for Noro Silk Garden, Kirion, or Cash Aroha, as well as Debbie Bliss Cashmerino Aran. So it was mixed. It was a solid with this highly variegated yarn, and much more fitted than mine is. My yarn and my ribbon were a little bulkier, and so I think that mine just turned out bigger. But I'll put a picture in so you can all see it. And then I got great buttons. I am gonna put this on and just wear it to death because it's lovely. There's absolutely nothing wrong with this. Nothing wrong. It's got seed stitch on the cuffs, and the sleeves are big, kind of roomy. It's just, it could be that perfect sloppy Saturday cardigan for me when you're just cold or running errands. This sweater has never been included in my sweater class, and I think it's partly because it just seemed so outdated because of the ribbon and people not really wanting to knit with novelty yarns. But if you have some yarn and you don't have enough for a sweater and you're looking for a sweater to like mesh two kinds together like a solid and a variegated, this I think would just be a great option. So might want to take a look at Jane Ellison, the other sweater that I knit by Jane Ellison. Okay, the husband came through, the garbage man came, so I took a little break there. I watched a documentary over the holidays, several actually, and I'm going to talk about a couple of them over the next couple of weeks. But I watched AM Greta Thuneberg, who is the young woman who just turned 18, but she started this strike, the school strike on Fridays, to kind of draw more attention to climate change. And she has Asperger's, and that'll tie in a minute here. And it was just very interesting how one young person really tried to change something that she believes so strongly in. It's super motivating to think. When my daughter was little, there was a giant oak tree in an empty field, and she used to call it her tree, and we'd drive by it, and I probably talked about it on the podcast before, but they were going to build on that piece of land. And she made a sign, and we went over and took a picture, and she had people sign a petition. And then she tied this giant poster board with a big bow around this tree saying, "Please save my tree." And they did. They left it in the middle of a parking lot. Whether or not that tree can survive to this day, now that she's probably 8 or 9 at the time, because, once they disturb all that earth and the roots around it, but they did leave it in the parking lot. And so I just think it shows children and young people that they could possibly make a difference. It's just a really good documentary. I highly recommend I Am Greta. Then last night, my husband and I finished watching season 6 of Parenthood, and I cried. My husband does not watch TV. He's not a TV watcher. He doesn't like to sit down at night and spend any amount of time, but I started watching Parenthood on the recommendation of Amber, who said that they just loved watching it, and I didn't watch it in real time when it was on TV. And I started watching, and the first or second episode, the grandpa is restoring an old car, and he's talking to his daughter about the car. And I said to Ross, you might really like the relationship between this daughter and her dad, because they're restoring this old car. And he's like, what kind of car? What kind of engine did it have in it? And so he sat down and started watching, and he got hooked. So every night, I have waited for him then, and every night we have been watching 1, 2, or 3 episodes of Parenthood. And the last week or two, he's had a lot more time off work, and we have been eating in the family room in front of the TV on a little TV tray. And we never ate that way before. We always ate in the kitchen. He's such a neatnik, and he just would never approve of the idea of eating in the family room. So we literally put the dog in the mudroom so we can start watching sooner and watch it. It is such a wonderful show. If you have not ever watched Parenthood and you are looking for something to watch this winter, it is the story of the parents who are technically grandpa and grandma, and then their 4 children, 2 of whom are single and 2 of whom are married, but there's a divorce situation and kind of a non-existent father in one of the situations, and so it's parenting of all the kinds, right? It's a parenting of grown adult children, and then parenting of small children, and then the cycle of life as the kids get older. And it was so good. It made me laugh out loud and cry. And there are 2 more perfect children and 2 more rebel children. And if you have 4 children and have experienced that, I think you would really get it. It just really good. So cannot recommend enough watching Parenthood. I'm sad it's over. I want to start it again and watch it again and have the same experience, not knowing what happens, because it just really was something that we enjoyed together. He looked forward to coming and sitting with me. Usually he'll go out to the garage after supper because he wants to get some work done and spend his time on his passion, and I usually sit down and knit and watch something, and we really enjoyed it. So now we're looking for something new to watch. I think we might try that Virgin River show, and there's one other one that someone recommended. So we're going to see. I haven't watched it all. I've watched so many of them that many of the good ones that you would recommend to me, I would say, yeah, I already watched that. Like, I don't want to watch The Sopranos again. I don't want to watch West Wing again. I don't want to watch Gilmore Girls again. I was making a list in my phone last night of all the TV shows. Grey's Anatomy, The Good Wife, Sherlock, Breaking Bad, Downton Abbey. There's Game of Thrones, Orange is the New Black. There were so many that I literally, Great British Bake Off, This Is Us, I'm certainly watching now, Anne with an E. I've just watched so much over the years, and he hasn't, so we got to find something that we can both kind of watch. I did finish watching Bridgerton last night. I think the costuming was magnificent. If you know going in that it's based on a sexy romance novel, then maybe you're prepared for, where it goes. It certainly is not a period drama about the 1800s, in that most of the, characters would not have behaved this way, and that some of the items probably wouldn't have happened. It's a kind of a modern day take, I think. I did really enjoy it. I liked watching it a lot. And then I did finish that Tiny Little Things that I told you about last time, which is, I don't know why there's so much out now that's so filled with sex. I think it's because so many people are watching it. And I think you have to just be prepared going into so many of these shows that there's going to be, if not sex, outright sex, relations that they're going to show sexual innuendo. So, and I'm not a prude. I don't mind some of it, but wow, some of these shows are just full of it, right? It's like the thing that's getting people to watch, so they're adding it when it doesn't. It's a little gratuitous. I don't know. Am I turning red? Am I blushing? Maybe not a topic for the podcast. Corey? Well, I am who I am. I usually talk about things. Okay, a couple more things. All my patterns are on sale for 50% off from 2020. So I have 18 patterns that that kind of got released during 2020, which was a huge goal of mine. For me to get the book out was huge, the Knitworks book. But I put all those patterns on sale through yesterday at midnight, and then I had someone reach out and say that they were getting some Christmas money, and would be any way that they could get some of my patterns through 50% off this week. And I had already put it out that it was going to be done on Sunday, and so I kind of hate messing with that. But I thought, okay, I'm going to put it out through Wednesday, because that's when she needed it. And then if any of you watched this early and you didn't know that there was a sale going on, you could still get it. So the coupon code is Goodbye 2020, GOODBYE 2020, and you get 50% off all 18 patterns. So you can buy 1, 2, 6, 18 and get 50% off. And I did have a number of people take advantage of that. I just wanted to kind of celebrate. I know financially it's been a tough year for people, and maybe you wanted a pattern and you couldn't afford it, or if you're not on my newsletter, so you didn't get it for cheap, because if you're on my newsletter, you get it for cheap. I have designs coming out, and I always give the newsletter people the biggest coupon code first. Anyway, so the patterns are the Very Merry Mix-Up, the Toad Hollow Tunic, and the High Ho Shawl, all my collaborations this year with Toad Hollow and their yarns. And so those are on sale for 50% off. And I know a lot of you who watch me watch them. And then all 8 Knitworks patterns, not the book, because the book was still on sale at that $9 value. So the whole book is not on sale, but the individual patterns. So if you just wanted to get just the pillow pattern, you could get that for 50% off. Then my Up North set, which was the Up North cabin hat, cowl, mittens, and socks. So there were 4 in that set that we raised money for Down Syndrome International last year in February. That fundraiser is not happening this year. Lisa, who ran it, is opting to not do it this year, and so that will not, be a thing. But those are the 4. I did the socks for that knit along, and also for the fundraiser, and then I had the set completed. So if you wanted to grab that, now if you get the hat, the cowl comes for free. If you get the mittens, the cowl comes for free. If you get the socks, the cowl comes for free. Or if you just want the cowl, you have to buy it. So I don't know why you would, but some people don't want a lot of patterns. They just want the one they want. So the cowl was just an iteration that went coordinated, so I gave it away, but you get it with all those patterns, so it is a little confusing. It says it right on the front page of each of the patterns, so if you read that, you would know. But sometimes people get the socks and they get the cowl too, and they weren't aware that the cowl was coming, and they're like, whoa, how did that happen? Magic. It's just the magic of Ravelry that I just put them both in there. And then I have my basic beginning knit Aran hat that I teach to the basic, the beginner knitters at the library, and I wrote that up for people that just are starting, maybe want to knit their first hat, as well as the easiest cabled hat ever and the Cottywomple cowl. So that's the list of all the patterns that you can get. If anybody's looking, I just wanted to let everyone know that I put those on sale through Wednesday, which will be January 6th at midnight Central Standard Time. It's not very often that I share a work in progress or a finished object on the podcast, but today I am going to show you something that I finished last night, and it's because I have been trying to finish up this cowl that I cast on for quite a while, and it is made with that Alpine fur yarn, and it was on the needles sitting next to the chair for the entire month. And so each night, in the last week, 10 days, I take my hand off, I do my exercises, my braces off, do my exercises, and then I try on these big size 15 needles to knit a couple of stitches. And I pick, and so I do have to grip my hand, but my physical therapist says it's okay to start working on some, I have to touch all my fingers and move my thumb over. That's the goal. They want you to be able to touch your finger and then slide it all the way down. So with my brace off, I can do some of those. So I've been doing a few stitches, and I think it was 2 nights ago when I got to the point, where I could bind it up. There was so little left to do, it was kind of bothering me. And I thought, I can do the last 2 rows of that over this, next few weeks, and then I can bind it. You can get your hands on some of this Alpine yarn, and I think it's on sale everywhere. I got it for $5 a skein. They were getting rid of their last skeins at my local yarn store. And this is all the colors they had. They had 2 pinks, 2 grays, and 2 creams. And Kylie took the pink and made a cowl for someone for Christmas. She had to make a gift for someone, and so she came over and she's like, Mom, I don't have time to knit a hat, right? And I said, yeah, I get it. And she said, do you have anything? And I said, I do have this. And she took the pink, and so I was left with the gray, which is fine. I don't love gray, but I think within this it looks just great. So this took 4 skeins. So it cost me $20, a size 15 needle. I cast on. This is a free pattern from Church Mouse Yarns. And it's just a big, bulky, and I do think I could wrap it twice, but putting it up around my ears and my face. So I know we're not leaving our house much these days to go out in the cold, in the bitter cold, but I thought I would just share it with everyone because it is lovely, and sometimes you need a quick last minute gift. It might be a fun cowl to do. I don't know how many colors are available. I did look, and there is yarn available out there, like yarn.com has some, and one of my local yarn stores has some. The Yarnery is where I got mine on sale. And I think they just had these skeins left over. Maybe they have more in bigger quantities, like full bags and that kind of thing. Amber bought some at Stitches to make a blanket out of it. I think bought a bag or 2 bags of it to make a blanket. It's just lovely. If you have little kids, it would be fun to make a ball in it, and and stuff it and just have that soft texture for a little one. Anyway, so I just thought I would share it because it was sitting on the table because I wanted to take some pictures of it to post. So I did knit enough in the last 10 days, 2 rows and a bind off, to finish up this cowl. I have 3 little tidbits for CORI'S stories this week. The first one is that Ross and I went down and saw May, and I'm going to put in a little clip of kind of when we arrived and a picture of her, and it's not very good because we had to stand outside and speak to her through the screen, and they wouldn't open the window, so it was a glass, and we were hoping that they would open the window, and they didn't. It was cold. We were bundled up, but and I was in my boot and my hand brace, but she had to keep her mask on, and my husband wore his mask, and we were outside in front of the window, and I thought, we can't see each other's faces, right? There was no interaction between us, right? We dropped her presents at the front door, and then someone came and took the bag from that drop-off area because they have this thing set up, and then they eventually brought it to her. But it was just sad to see her sitting there, and I kept, trying to hug her and saying, I love you. And we stood outside for almost a half an hour, but she talked so much about the cards she's receiving from so many of you. And so I just wanted to bring it up because we did drive down. She lives about 2 hours away. Ross's brother lives in the town, just a few blocks from where she's in the nursing home. And we drove down, and we saw her for about a half an hour, and then we drove back. So it was a long afternoon. It was sunny, and I was so happy to get out of the house because I really have not been leaving the house much. And I said, that's something I can do. I can ride along, and then I could just walk up to the front. And she liked her gifts that we gave her, but she really liked the things that some of you have sent. She said, I hope to be able to write to people, but my handwriting is just getting so poorly. I'm so shaky. And so I just want to tell you that she tells me, I got one from Virginia, and I got one from Wisconsin, and I got one from Arizona, and I got one from Florida, and the East Coast people are just sending, it has been a gift that you all gave me when you said, I'll write her a letter. And she's got them all in a basket, and she said she wanted to bring them down, and she forgot because they took her to lunch, and then we got there, so she was still at lunch, so they didn't take her back to her room. And I told her I didn't need to see them this time, but next time maybe she could show me the basket of all the ones that she's got. And it was very, very nice. So I just wanted to tell you all that. Then for Christmas, I gifted my daughter's boyfriend, Stevie, a knitted item on the needles. And he's new to our family, so he doesn't understand the whole knitting thing, right? They've been dating for 3 years, but they've been in college, and so they're away, so they're not like present in our lives too much, because for a lot of that she was away at college, and now they're in St. Paul, which is not that far. But so anyway, he unwrapped this box, and he lifted it out, and it was his blanket, and I'll put a picture in. So he unwrapped this box, and it was his fisherman's rib blanket that I started last spring, kind of maybe even before we got locked down, trying to remember. But I did not get that far before I started to write the book, and then the book was all consuming, but I'd already committed the 3 designs to Toad Hollow for the year. And when you commit to making designs for people, you gotta buck up and do what you need to do and get those out. So things jumped in front of his blanket, even though I love knitting on it. And I had knit Kylie that fisherman's rib blanket And I just thought it would be fun, since they moved in together in August, partly because of the pandemic. They wanted to be in each other's bubble, that they would both have one. So I had pulled out all my single leftovers from sock yarn in all the dark colors, so the grays and the browns and the blacks and the blues and the purples and anything that had, variegated, that had any of those dark colors in it. And then I'm holding it double with that single strand. And he was like, oh, thanks. And I couldn't put the picture because he laid it up on his shirt and flipped it over in the back so it looked like he had a cowl on. And it was really cute, because I said, oh, let me take a picture. So I took a picture of him wearing it like that, and Kylie was, kind of talking to him about it, and she's like, if you know a knitter, it is not uncommon for knitters to not finish the items before the scheduled event, and you will often get a note that says, this is your blanket. And it was so cute, because he turned to me and I said, so now you have to give it back to me, and then as soon as my hand is, well enough, I will work on it the rest of the winter. And he said, I thought I had to finish it. And it was so cute, because his heart must have been pounding. He must have been like panicking that, oh my gosh, she's going to make me learn how to knit and finish this blanket. I think that was just his first reaction, right? Was, oh, what? Like, I don't know how to knit. I can't finish this. We laughed and laughed, and Kyle was like, no, that's not how it works. It's just she wanted you to know that she started something for you, and that, it hasn't gotten finished yet because of her surgery, everything. So I just thought I would put that out there for all of you to know. Let's do the hellos. I am not sure I'm going to continue with saying hello to everyone every week when we do the podcast. It does make the podcast longer. I do enjoy having interaction with all of you, though, and so I'm hoping that we can still have a conversation, even though I might not say hello going forward. So hello to Carol Childers, Heather Wilson, Rachel Weisenstein, Cheryl Lacemaker, Kathy B., Rebecca Knutson, Peggy Bork, M. Bowl, Christina K., Pat Kohler, Wendy Morris, Patty Skaggs, Penny, Mashila, Timberly Weitzel, Meg Carr, Kara Parkman, L. Cator, Margarita Deverson, Kelly Mathern, Diana Barnes, Rochelle, Julie Smith, Carol Morrison, Stacy Weiner, Christy Lakaitis, Luana Hendricks, Jane Taylor, Janet Robertson, Chris Osborne, Janet Holler, Donna Fink, Melita Carter, Michelle, Olivia, Wonder Willie 100, Glenda Bathgate, Sherry Perry, Brandy Stoker, Melinda Rousseau, thank you for the card and gift, Crochet Creations, Emma Butcher, Janet Goyer, Kathy Goodman, Pat Howes, Linda Gesling, Danielle Brown, Martha Gunta, Carol Morrison, Victoria Knits, Mary Brendenberg, Evelyn Burt, Michelle M., Candy Harris, Terry Monk, Eileen Tomero, Janet Holler, Stephanie Haberman, and Mary Kate. There are a number of people who are viewers of this podcast who are in a hard place right now. And without my breaking any confidence, I want those people to know that I lift them up, and that I will say a prayer for you, and that I hope that things get better in 2021. We have all been in a hard place, but when people write and tell you about the struggles that they are having with medical conditions and family situations, it is heartbreaking. And although I know that all of you know I have been through quite a bit in the last couple of months, nothing that I did was extremely difficult. My foot is doing well. It bothers me when I walk too much. I see the doctor on Wednesday, and I'm assuming that he's going to tell me that I can start to walk more and that it won't hurt it. But until then, I'm trying to walk less so that I'm not doing any premature damage. It's been just over a month. It'll be just about 6 weeks when I see him, and I think I will be given, we took the scooter back. I had physical therapy in my hand last Thursday. It's doing well. I can do a lot with it, and I do take the brace off for quite a while at night when I'm just sitting in the chair and try to, page through a book, or I even tried to do some knit stitches, but it hurts. it still hurts. There's a bit of pain still. I told my husband last night, I'm a little tired of low grade pain, right? It's not a 10, it's not a 9, you know, they're like a 3 and a 5, right? Just kind of want it to go away. It's enough that you could take a ibuprofen, but you don't really want to take any more because your stomach. But all of you that wished me well, this is nothing in comparison to what some people have going on with, you know, unemployment and people losing their jobs and some people losing where they live. This was certainly manageable for me, and my husband's still working from home, and he's here and he's learning how to cook and help out, and I really haven't had to go anywhere other than to the orthopedic center and back. It really has not been too bad. I am definitely on the backside of things. I'm recovering well. So I would like to have all of you think about the people who have it, you know, worse off than I do right now, because we do have some members of our community who are really struggling and could probably need some positive thoughts. I wish I could tell you their stories and their names, and then you could name them in your thoughts, but I don't feel comfortable doing that. I don't really want this to end on a down note. I'd like it to be happy. So the last announcement that I have is that I think we have convinced Amber to return to the world of podcasting and to the world of Instagram. She's going to give it a whirl. And you can look for possibly her having a podcast out later this week. So I thought I should just mention that, because I know a lot of you ask me. I get DMs about once a week with people saying, "Is Amber okay? Is everything okay with her? What's going on?" And that being said, the last thing I have for you this week is I took some time to video a day in the life of a podcast. And so I'm going to put it at the end here. They're going to be short little video clips. It might be a little jumpy, but as I went to bed last night, I took a video and I thought, okay, tomorrow on most of the steps of my morning, I'm going to just kind of show people how I prepare, get ready for the podcast and what has to happen. And it might be kind of fun for people to watch. I think I mostly did it because I was watching some Vlogmas videos, and I think my favorite that I watched was the Chelsea podcast with Christina and Tad. They just did a lovely job of doing Vlogmas. So if you're looking for, 20-minute video, 30-minute videos every day for the month of December, I usually in the past have watched Molly of a Homespun House. I watched Sandy by the Lakeside. I'm not going to name them all. There were a number that I watched intermittently. I know the Toad Hollow ladies have literally been podcasting every day during the Monday through Friday during the pandemic, which is incredible. I have to do a lot of editing because I get a lot of interruptions and I run my mouth. And so my video gets very chopped up because I go off on more tangents than you hear. And I can't imagine doing the amount of editing that I do on a daily basis to try to make something coherent out of this podcast. Sometimes I move segments around because I come back to them later, and it just gets to be a little bit of a hot mess. So the fact that they sit down and can kind of be coherent and talk and then be done and get it edited and uploaded every day is kind of incredible. And the people who did Vlogmas too, I would like to try Vlogmas sometime, but boy, that's a lot. It's a lot to do all those little, you probably get better at it, little video clips of your day and what's appropriate to show and what isn't. Like, do you want to show, your dirty kitchen or your laundry room or not? I don't know why that is what came up in my mind, but anyway. Until next time, waddle on, no green bananas. Don't complain with your mouth full. You'll never regret ripping back. Keep it colorful. Keep your fork. I love you all. Bye. light there. And then this is what I have to do to try to remind myself where to look, because the little camera is on the left and I always look at the center of the screen, and that bothered some people. So I'm trying, but I still have to be able to look over here to see where I'm showing something. And then I have a light over there. I don't know if you can see how bright that is, but that's shining on me too to try to, I have the dining room table taken. You get it? It's a mouthful. It's a new one.